I'm gonna quickly try and go over this game. This is a game where white opens with d4 and follows with a few bizarre moves, which creates what we call an open game. That means there are lots of open lines and lots of opportunities for tactical exchanges. This is a bit different from what you would normally see in a game that starts with the move d4. Now, I'll just quickly go over the fact that there's a big difference between an opening of d4 and e4, and I'm going to reserve discussion of that for another time because it's a very long and in-depth discussion. But just to be very clear, both these two moves are like night and day, and some people are exclusively d4 players, some people are exclusively e4 players, some people can play both of them relatively equally, but almost everyone has a preference, and the basic difference is that d4 will lead you into a slower, more positional game with closed positions. e4 should lead you into a more open game with open lines, files, and tactical maneuvers, sharp tactical games. So if you're a player who likes long, drawn-out positional struggles, d4 is a preferred move. And if you're a player who likes exchanges and sharp, tactical kind of games with open lines and that kind of thing, then e4 is a preferred line. The irony is that in this game, even though white opens with d4, he doesn't really continue the game with a successful or logical continuation. Black does, though. d5 is a logical move, and this move, I think, we all understand by now. This is not a good move. You never start out by bringing your knight onto the side of the board like that. It's a gimmick. It doesn't have any real logical validity, and it's just a bad move. This is a logical move. It opens up a diagonal for the bishop, and it gives space for the queen to come out, and it's getting ready to develop and castle on this side here with the king. Just to be a little bit, I suppose, initiative-minded or aggressiveness-minded, always consider trying something else besides just castling on the king side. Consider castling on the queen side once or twice, just to see the kind of feel you get from it. And the way you'd castle on the queen side is just by making a logical progression of, making a logical succession of moves, you know, just the same as you would the other way, except doing it on this side instead. So this is a hypothetical line showing castling on the queen side. Now you can just take a moment to look at this position, and now we've got a queenside castle position, and it's a lot different. Just take a moment to look at it and pause the game and look at this position and consider how much different this position is. Okay, so I'm just assuming you looked at that and thought about it for a moment. This is back to the actual game now. Now this is an interesting move that you should always consider when you're playing white. And there are some players who swear by it, and I can say that I don't mind this move at all for white because it's a very aggressive initiative-taking move, and what it's telling black basically is it's saying to black, look, I know you're going to castle on this side, I know you want to castle on this side, and I'm going to keep moving this pawn up, and I'm going to begin attacking this side before you even start it. And I dare you to castle on the other side, because I don't think you can. That's what is basically being said when white plays h4. He's threatening h5, and he's already delving deep into black's territory, and if black castles right into that, it's dangerous. So that's always a tactic to consider with white, especially when you're playing against a player who you absolutely know is going to castle on the king side. It's a very successful way of putting pressure on that side very early and very quickly. And it's a way of exposing somebody who can't castle on both sides. The only problem in this game is white never really followed up on that attack. So we have an attack on the queen here. Right now the engine is showing a 1-pawn advantage for black. The reason for this 1-pawn advantage, in short, is threefold. One, the knight is in a terrible position, it can't do anything, so it's basically not there. Two, black can kick the bishop away and gain tempo with his next move. And three, white's king is in a bad position. So when you combine all of those positional factors, it equates materially to 1 pawn, more or less. So black could have played something else there. There's nothing wrong with that move. Black could have played f6 though, which I would have preferred f6 here, because it, as I said before, it gains a tempo. And what do we mean again when we say gains a tempo is that I make a move as black, I'm making a move, I'm moving forward, and at the same time you're forced to move backward. So I'm making progress, and at the same time I'm forcing you to regress. Progress, regress. So that's why f6 is a slightly superior move to knight c, or knight f6. But knight f6 is okay also. Now these are just some developing moves. Now, if white was really serious about his attack, he should have probably started pressing here already with that. At least that's what I would have done, but he didn't do that in the game. He played this instead, which is much too late for this tactic. This tactic belongs much earlier in the game, and this is what you call the English opening. And it's just very confused here, and it makes no sense whatsoever. It allows for this. That's no good for white. And then after that, it's kind of a broken position, and this file here is going to become very important in this variation. It's not like this move is the end of the world, but it's not the right time for it or the right place. White probably got a little bit confused because this is the right way to go if you're playing the English opening, but it's not the right time to do it. And probably the better move there for black would be to leave that pawn alone, because this is allowing white now to bring his knight back into play. Much better to just leave his knight out there. Leave the pieces like this. Say he takes eventually. Say he takes. This is better for black here. Now this position is much better. Taking here, the problem with it is that it equalizes the game now, because the next move white can get he can activate this piece. And when you've got your opponent, when you look over the board, look at your opponent's pieces and look at the pieces that are not activated. His knight was just useless, and he was trying to find a way to bring it into play, and black basically gave him a way to do that. So next time, if white or whoever your opposition is has left a piece in a bad position that he can't get out of, just leave him there. Don't give him an opportunity to bring it back in. And the other kind of problem with this is that it now creates a lot of complications on the D file. And now there's going to be a big struggle over the D file if the game is played correctly. And so now the next move we have was the knight comes out. Black's knight comes out. And the reason that this is not the best move for black is because of this variation. Now, The reason is a bit abstract, so I don't blame black for not seeing it, but you have to take a look, always look at your opponent's king's vulnerability. White's king is becoming extremely vulnerable on this side. You want to be able to come here and play this. You don't want to give up this bishop here. You don't want to trade it off. And this is allowing an opportunity for black to get out of trouble by this. Now, basically, white has solved all the problems that he had before, and the game can just continue on like this. And this is just a totally equal game, so black has lost all the advantage he had earlier with that variation. So a better variation would be not to do that. But in the game that was played, white plays a good move, I think. Brings his queen out. Aggressive move anyway. I think that it's okay for him to bring his queen out at this point. The only problem is that he's completely ignoring his own king. So now we have takes, takes. Now let's go back a second. Could black take here? He could, but the computer doesn't really like it because of which begins to create all kinds of problems, putting pressure on this square, putting pressure on black's king. When you add this knight, this rook, and the queen, and the pressure on this bishop, that's not the best position. But anyhow, black didn't take it, which is the right move. Instead he castles. And this is a big mistake for white. And I think probably the game was lost when white made this move. And as I say in most of my analysis of games, chess is a game where the game is lost because one side makes a mistake, and this is the mistake.